girls! So welcome back to Fate from Friday. For the second case for this week, we are going back to New York. This case was actually said to be like pretty much infamous for like when it happened. However, it's been like almost 30 years since the murder happened. It happened back in 1995. And so of course as time went on, it seems that people have since forgotten about this case, but obviously it's well known enough to have found out about it, and there have been other people who've covered it. Of course, I'm gonna get my input on it. Sources down below as always. So I'm gonna quit my rambling and let's go get started. Eliza Izquierdo was born on February 11th, 1989, to her Cuban father, Gustavo, who she took his last name, so Gustavo Izquierdo, and then her Puerto Rican mother, Awalda Lopez. Eliza was born addicted to cocaine because apparently her mother was doing it while she was pregnant. And then Gustavo, the father, he was said to have been born on November 26, 1954. And then Awalda, the mother, she is one of 13, and she was born April 28th, 1966. So the two actually met in 1987, so like 2 years before Eliza was even born. And apparently Gustavo was a cook at a homeless shelter, and Awalda, because she had a little drug problem, she was homeless, and so she was staying at the shelter as one of the homeless residents. So of course, with Awalda being addicted to drugs, custody went to Gustavo, and Gustavo, props to him, he was actually trying to be the best father he could be. He actually had her enrolled to an elite preschool when she's like 1, and then he's working like long hours and taking parenting classes because apparently she was the only kid that he had ever had. But at least I'm gonna try my best. So for her 4th birthday, Gustavo actually rented out like a hall to celebrate her being like baptized. Apparently it was like for her 4th birthday, but she also apparently got baptized. So I guess like a double celebration. So then in 1991, Awalda would actually start requesting unsupervised visits because apparently, like I said, she was addicted to cocaine and she apparently was getting better, but she did relapse occasionally, and she was also going to parenting classes. I don't know if that was like required, but she was going to parenting classes, I guess, to like prove that she was a capable mother to Eliza. And so her mother had actually got married to a man by the name of Carlos Lopez, which I assume that's why she has the last name Lopez, is because of him. Earlier that year, and they actually had 3 kids together, and Awalda actually had 2 other kids other than Eliza, named Casey and Ruben Stesso, who custody had been taken away from her prior. So that's why she doesn't have them. And the 3 kids that she had with Carlos, I guess that she did have custody of was Tasha, Carlos, and Rafael. And so apparently there was an incident where Carlos had apparently stabbed Awalda 17 times with a knife in front of Eliza. And so Awalda unfortunately lives. And of course Carlos is taken away to jail for pretty much like attempted murder. So yeah. And then in 1992, Eliza would come back, because yeah, she is having unsupervised visits with Awalda, so she would come back to Gustavo's house because Gustavo has custody of her. She comes back to the house with bruises, and apparently a friend of his would later say he remembers that she would refuse to go to a bathroom, like she would refuse to go into a bathroom, and he saw her apparently throw up one time, and she also refused to play with other kids. So Gustavo was actually paying attention. He was noticing these bruises, and he was like, "Oh, we ain't going for that." So he goes to the court. He's like, "Hey, her mother's abusing her. Can we like not send her over there?" And apparently it was granted. Fortunately, he did start falling behind on tuition because, like I said, he is sending her to a private school. So apparently, you have to spend tuition for your child to even get to go there. So then the school gets in contact with Prince Michael of Greece and Denmark, who apparently was a benefactor for the school. So like an actual prince was like, so yeah, that's how you know it's one of those bougie schools for actual princes. Yeah. So apparently, he was so touched by her story that he paid the $1,000 debt, because apparently it was just $1,000 debt that he owed, and he offered to pay for Eliza all the way throughout college. And keep on, I think she's like 5, so she's like in kindergarten, if that. So like all the way through college, apparently she was like that charming. So in early 1994, Eliza takes a screening test before she gets accepted into like the Brooklyn Friends School, and then she winds up getting accepted. And then, unfortunately, in early May of 1994, Gustavo gets diagnosed with cancer. He makes a plan to pretty much take Eliza to Cuba, which apparently is not legal. But we're trying to get away from the abuse of his mother. And not his mother, but the abuse of her mother. So, Awalda, right? And then he actually had it set up to where, you know, after I die, because he knew it was bad, he didn't have long to live. He had it set up to where his cousins was supposed to take care of of Eliza after he passes. And unfortunately, he did wind up passing on May 26, 1994. And apparently that was the exact same day that he was supposed to leave with Eliza. He had plane tickets and everything. Now, of course, with Gustavo dead, because he did legally have custody of her, Eliza gotta go somewhere, because she's like 5 or 6 when the story happens. And so it's like a custody battle between the cousin that he had planned to go raise Eliza or Awalda. Many people came in and said the cousin would be a way better fit. She might, Walda might be the biological mother, but she's not a mother. She's not mother material, essentially. And so then apparently Prince Michael was one of those people who also like came in and was like, hey, yeah, she don't need to go to her mom. Walda still got her anyway. So of course you can imagine, out of the 3 kids, 4 kids, apparently Eliza was apparently singled out by Awalda, because normally in these cases that I cover, there's that one child that is singled out of all the kids. For what reasons, it varies along each case. So apparently she wasn't allowed to go play out with kids, which is why she would refuse to go play out with kids, with other kids, while with her father. And then apparently she would be made to starve, but watch her other siblings eat. It wasn't like I didn't have money. It was just that, you're going to starve, but you're going to watch your siblings eat. She would have to go use the bathroom in a bucket. And these buckets, of course, would eventually overflow, and they would spill into the apartments below them, because they were living in apartments. So then apparently whenever that happened, she would start using her own bed as a toilet. And then there were points where she was made to eat her own feces. There was one time where apparently Awalda had used Eliza's head as a mop and like cut her hair off. And then Eliza apparently was said to start pulling out her own hair, possibly due to stress and like getting abused. She was getting hanged from like a shower rod. She would have her hands burned on like a hot stove. There was one point where apparently she had a fractured shoulder and she didn't get like medical attention for like 3 days afterwards. And so Awalda, I guess because you remember Eliza's still in public school. She, I guess not even public, but she's in school, right? So she withdraws her from school, which, red flag. So obviously you keep the abuse going, and ain't nobody from the school gonna report me because she's homeschooled. So who's gonna see her, right? Because again, she wouldn't allow to leave the house either. So, and then of course, unfortunately, it said that Eliza was violated with a hairbrush and a toothbrush by Awalda. In 1995, Carlos apparently got like 3 years in prison for like slamming Eliza against a wall. And then Eliza, of course, she's crying out for her father, because again, her father was there for her. Her father loved her. That was like somebody she could count on, as a daughter should with her father. And so apparently it's believed that she didn't know that Gustavo was dead, because he'd been dead for a good year at this point. And so apparently Awalda had apparently yelled at her and said that her dad was dead. And sometime apparently in like late November 1995, Awalda would apparently slam Eliza's head into a wall, and it caused her brain to hemorrhage. She would then call her sister, and her sister's like, you need to like call 911 to get medical attention for your daughter. And she was like, I'll think about it. And apparently she was washing dishes while talking to her sister. And then the next day, apparently Eliza wasn't waking up. So she goes to a neighbor's house. The neighbor comes over. There's brain fluid coming out of her nose, and obviously she is deceased. So the neighbor's like, call the police, get some help for your daughter, even though it's, like I said, it's believed she's deceased. And she refuses, and apparently this goes on for like 2 whole ass hours. Now, why the neighbor couldn't call the police, I don't know, but like, yeah. And then apparently police do show up. The neighbor calls the police eventually. Police do show up, and Awalda goes apparently to the roof of the apartment building and threatens to jump off. But unfortunately, she doesn't jump off, and apparently she's able to be talked down. So they do, I guess, like an autopsy on Eliza, and Eliza had like at least a good 30 marks that they thought were cigarette burns, but apparently later came out to be from a ring. And then, despite Awalda pretty much being the cause of her death, she was granted Eliza's remains, meaning that she wouldn't be buried next to her father, which I'm pretty sure that's what he would have wanted. But yeah, and apparently she had Eliza buried on top of a stranger. Some random ass person that we don't even know, because apparently she that bad didn't want her buried next to her own father. And the mayor in New York City at the time apparently had created the Administration of Children's Services, and apparently this is an organization that was trying to prevent abuse, and any abuse that I guess like they found out about, they had to report it to the mayor. So then Awalda, also she gets arrested, she pleads guilty, she gets charged with second-degree murder, and she's only sentenced to 15 years to life. And as far as from what I can see, she's been denied like 3 times. So like 2010, 2020, in September of 2022. So then Carlos, the husband, he was charged with second-degree assault, and apparently he was made to serve 18 months to 3 years concurrently with the sentence that he was already serving for slamming Eliza against the wall. And then there was a law passed in Eliza's name, apparently called Eliza's Law, and it was passed on February 12, 1996, and apparently this creates harsher punishments for CPS workers if a child dies and abuse had been reported in the past. Because sometimes the child dies, but there's like no reported abuse. So like, if there's abuse and y'all didn't do shit and the child wound up dying, y'all gonna get some harsh ass punishments, which rightfully so. Yeah, so like I said, it was a pretty well known case back then, especially if you were in New York City around that time. But apparently, like I said, over the years, it's kind of gotten forgotten about. And while people have covered it, I feel like it's one of those cases that should still be talked about to this day, because it could have very much have been prevented. And what Gustavo did to try to get her to Cuba technically apparently was illegal, but he was trying to do the best he could because he knew if she's in the hands of her mother, she ain't gonna make it. And unfortunately she didn't, hence why we made the story. And so yeah, if anybody has any similar cases you think I should cover, especially if they were like famous back then, but they're like not as well talked about now, definitely let me know. And that's all I have for this video. I'm here for you guys 3 times every Friday, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.